Book review, Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. Hello, this is Chris speaking. Wake up with a book review. I'm going to do a few book reviews in the next few months. The first one is the Autobiography of a Yogi, a classic on Raja Yoga, on Kriya Yoga, and many interesting stories about amazing gurus like Babaji and Lahiri Mahasaya and Sri Yukteswar Giri and so on. The first time I read the book more than 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I don't remember exactly. It was a little bit demotivating, I thought, because he was talking and writing about all these siddhis, all these amazing abilities, bringing people back from the dead, being at two places at the same time, not having to eat anything, and so on. Strange stories, somehow demotivating, somehow, but also piquing interest and ambition on the spiritual path. And now that I read it again, I must say that this is probably one of the books with the most detrimental and hurtful consequences to seekers of the spiritual path. Yes, I know, surprising. For many people it's a bit like a Bible. It's a classic on yoga. But I'm going to tell you why I think it has a very negative effect on the spiritual community, on everyone who's seeking for enlightenment. Firstly, there's a huge focus on siddhis and vibhutis. And the information is transported or implied somehow that this is an integral part of the spiritual path. Automatically, if you reach certain stages and states of consciousness, you will have siddhis, amazing supernatural X-Men-like Marvel siddhis, or otherwise you cannot possibly be in a higher state of enlightenment or consciousness, which is complete bogus. Some people get siddhis, some people don't, and it's not really under your control what kind of siddhis you will get. You will get some and you will not get others. They will come, and later hopefully you will be able to let them go. But the important thing is they're not necessary. To the contrary, they're a distraction. They can be a huge ego boost. So, to assume that this is a part of the spiritual process that has to come into existence is a huge problem. Secondly, he does not make any distinction between spirituality and religion. For him it's one and the same thing. And he makes a lot of comparisons with Christianity, which is okay because it's a bit of a, let's say, there's some marketing in this book. He wants to make Indian spirituality palatable to the Western mind. So there are a lot of comparisons with Jesus and the wonders he performed, like also being siddhis, and the masters he met are Christ-like beings, which I think is unnecessary and also again partly wrong. Now, there has been a person or a group of persons called Jesus and his disciples, and they have been in higher states of consciousness, very high. But to call every enlightened person a Christ-like avatar, yeah, it's just one of these things, these religious things that we have in India, where it's very, very easy to be called a saint. Yes, people he talked about like Lahiri Mahasaya and Babaji and so on, they were very high on the consciousness scale, especially Babaji. And maybe with Babaji you could say it's a Christ-like saint. But not the others, not the same stage. And there's this thing in India sometimes that because everyone can call him or herself a saint, because there's so many, because it's allowed to step outside of the social context and become a sannyasin, a renunciate. In India there are so many people who, plus it's the second most populated country in the world, and it's a viable option to become a wandering monk, so to say. So there are so many people that you have to find a way to tell the frauds from the real saints apart. And one of the proofs Indians like to see from their saints is those siddhis and vibhutis. So somehow the cat chasing its own tail. My point is that at least half of the book is about these siddhis and about these so-called Christ-like sages. And for some people this might even be kindling their interest or even driving them to search for a teacher. Which is the next thing. Do you necessarily need a teacher for enlightenment? And the answer is no. It can be easier, especially for some people they might need one, but this time is drawing to an end. Today is another time. You just need to focus inside. You don't need a teacher whose feet you can kiss, and who you can adore like a living God. It may be a good thing, but it may also not be a good thing, because it leads to people following someone blindly for years or decades, and nothing is happening on their own consciousness front. So, in summary, it's an interesting book, but it's also filled with unnecessary stories, which for me are mostly marketing. Back then, about 100 years ago, when Swami Yogananda was traveling to the USA, this was probably necessary to propagate something so very, very different, something so very spiritual in such a material country and society and culture. Nowadays it's really, really important to focus inwards, to not look for any information or any gurus or any input from the outside. The only way is inwards. And this is why my final verdict on the book is interesting, but in the end detrimental and distracting from the spiritual path. Please leave your comments below. What do you think? What do you experiences with this book or similar books? Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing and joining me on Patreon. And thank you to all my patrons, and see you soon.